This is VOA News. I'm Jonathan Jones reporting. Vanessa Trump, the wife of Donald Trump Jr., was hospitalized early Monday as a precaution after opening a letter containing an unidentified white powder. Initial tests indicate the substance was not dangerous, but officials said the daughter-in-law of President Trump opened the letter addressed to her husband at their New York City apartment. Police said she felt ill after opening the letter and called for help, adding she was coughing and felt nauseous. Officials said a decontamination unit went to her apartment in midtown Manhattan. President Trump on Monday unveiled his long-awaited $1.5 trillion plan to tackle the nation's crumbling infrastructure. He met with state and local officials to discuss the initiative. Whether the plan will be approved by Congress is quite uncertain. Some Republican lawmakers are already voicing opposition to the overall cost of it, on top of recently adopted tax cuts and increased spending over the next 2 years that are already adding to the country's nearly $21 trillion in long-term debt. President Trump is sending a $4 trillion-plus budget request to Congress that includes money for a border wall on the south between the U.S. and Mexico and building up the military, but it is projected to increase the federal deficit by more than $1 trillion. The budget request is essentially a list of suggestions to lawmakers. The U.S. Constitution gives Congress the exclusive power to spend money, and congressional budget committees often ignore presidential requests from Republicans and Democrats alike. This is VOA News. The United States wants detained foreign fighters being held by the U.S.-backed Syrian Democratic Forces to be turned over to face justice in their home countries. Defense Secretary Jim Mattis is expected to raise the issue during a meeting in Italy with other members of the coalition fighting IS in Iraq and Syria. Correspondent Sabina Castelfranco reports from Rome.
Mattis arrived in Rome for talks on the war against the Islamic State terrorist group and what to do with thousands of detainees being held by the Syrian Democratic Forces, the SDF. Hundreds are foreign fighters, and Mattis is expected to tell defense ministers from the coalition fighting the IS they must take responsibility for the foreign fighters from their countries. Foreign fighters will not be the only issue discussed at the Rome meeting, with 13 of his coalition counterparts. He said that the battle to eradicate IS is ongoing.
There are numerous questions right now about what's next as we go forward. First mission, finish off ISIS physical caliphate. That is still underway. The fight's not over against ISIS. It's not over. It goes on. There's been tough fighting in the last week with ISIS.
Sabina Castelfranco for VOA News, Rome.
The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said on Monday he has had talks with the United States about the possibility of annexing Jewish settlements in the occupied West Bank. But in a rare note of discord between the staunch allies, the White House said his claim was false. He told a closed-door meeting of lawmakers from his right-wing Likud party, "On the subject of applying sovereignty, I can say that I've been talking to the Americans about it for some time. The controversial settlements are in territory claimed by the Palestinians as part of a possible future Palestinian state, but they've been occupied by Israel since the Six-Day War in 1967. The White House rebuffed the claim from Netanyahu, saying reports that the United States discussed with Israel an annexation plan for the West Bank are false. The United States and Israel have never discussed such a proposal, and President Trump's focus remains squarely on his Israeli-Palestinian peace initiative. The president has sought to rejuvenate Israeli-Palestinian peace talks, including dispatching his son-in-law Jared Kushner to the region to gauge the climate for renewed negotiations. You can find more on these and other late-breaking and developing stories from around the world around the clock at voanews.com and on the VOA News mobile app. I'm Jonathan Jones reporting from the world headquarters of the Voice of America in Washington.
That's the latest world news from VOA.